This world is filled with the dead. The Boy and the Heron is the latest from Studio Ghibli and writer director Hayao Miyazaki, whose previous work includes films like Kiki's Delivery Service, Castle in the Sky, Spirited Away, Ponyo, and Princess Mononoke. Cut off a wolf's head. It still has the power to bite. And ow! I needed that arm to hunt. How am I going to be able to hunt with one arm? How was I supposed to know there would be consequences to my actions? Give us the human, we will eat the human. And the field of soulless-eyed white creatures that just stare looking at you like... And a deer that just shows up, looks at you after drinking a little water and says, I'm going to go to my residence and say, I'm home, dear. My favorite Miyazaki movie, one of my favorite animated movies of all time. So goddamn good. Visceral, violent, beautiful in its sadness, because it is really sad. It is really just so goddamn great. I'm going to have to retro review this at some point. Earned every bit of the PG-13 rating that it got. And then we get the Howl's Moving Castle that got by with a PG rating, despite the haunting imagery in this and the fucked up shit going on with the moving castle. In a movie called Howl's Moving Castle, weird. And then we get to what was the last Miyazaki directed movie, The Wind Rises, that came out 10 years ago. And he said, you know what, I'm in my early 70s, I'm going to go retire. And now we get The Boy and the Heron. The man is a fresh-faced, bright, vibrant, 82 years old with a just tremendous list of work, a great body of work, not just directorial stuff, but any project he's been involved in. But when it comes to just stuff that he has helmed, he's a maniac as far as, micromanaging, not even control freak in a bad way, but he knows what he wants to do. And he knows exactly what he wants from his particular projects. Also want to shout one other animated movie that has nothing to do with Miyazaki that's in my collection, Paprika. This is really weird. It's not up to Miyazaki's quality, but it is really weird and goofy. Very goofy. But if you're unfamiliar with Miyazaki's work, I would encourage you guys to check out the 3 films that I talked about before. Paprika you can check out at some point after you check out those. And then The Boy and the Heron. Now, this has gotten quite a bit of hype, and early reviews indicate that it, has a lot of the Miyazaki tropes, and, stuff that he tends to follow and everything, like the same beats as far as a story that would be simple and almost dialed down in the hands of any other director. But Miyazaki being one of, if not the most iconic Japanese animated director of all time, especially for feature lengths, his films are fucking revered. Even the stuff that isn't like up, with all of these movies. In fact, I'm just going to hold these up one more goddamn time just in case you can get the visual demonstration. I don't have Spirited Away yet. I need to get that at some point. But the man has just a tremendous body of work, and with The Boy and the Heron, this feels much more like a personal project for him, and it's almost semi-autobiographical according to interviews with him and, feedback and facts about the movie. It's also loosely based on a Japanese novel from 1937, How Do You Live, about a boy that loses his father. And the story of this is set during World War II, where you have Mahito, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the Japanese cast's name. I did see the subtitle version because I like to see, movies like this in their original language. Nothing wrong with seeing the English cast or listening to the English cast if you want. That's fine. I prefer subtitle stuff. Same with horror. Same with any film I see from another country. That's just what I want. And the young man that voiced Mahito is great. He only has a few roles to his name, only got started in 2019. And if this is how good he is, and how much depth he can add, he is going to have a superstar career. And the rest of the voice cast, really goddamn good. Mahito loses his mother during air raids that, took out the hospital she was working at. And yeah, he couldn't rescue her. It has haunted him. And boy, this is the second movie in a week that I have seen where the Japanese are picking up the pieces after the, bombings and everything. There's Godzilla -1, and now there's this. And given the fact that, Miyazaki was born in 1941, I can imagine that even as a young man, he got to see some of the cleanup and aftermath and stuff like this. And Mahito has lost his mother. He's very haunted by this, and this apparently is mirroring, not exactly like, how she was lost, but mirroring the loss that, Miyazaki felt when he lost his mother, somebody that was very important to him, and he poured a lot of that into this project. So Mahito goes with his dad to countryside to get out of Tokyo because of the war and all that. Dad's going to continue his work, and also he is going to be with the now pregnant Natsuko, who is the sister of the now deceased mother. And she has some elderly women that are of equally weird looks, just because of the typical Miyazaki style and just how, great the animation is. Sumptuous animation, terrific stuff. All the earmarks of typical Miyazaki projects. And there's this one particular elderly lady, Kuriko, who basically is trying to not, trying to make sure that Mahito is safe, because since Natsuko is pregnant, she is, she's trying to, basically be nice to the son and everything, wants to accept him, wants him to accept her. And let's just say he's not taking all that well. He's not being a full-on dick, at least at first, but he's kind of being passive-aggressive because he wants his mother. As any child would. Nobody, especially losing a parent like that, somebody you love, the woman that gave birth to you. But there's also this weird tower that he's trying to visit. The entrance is blocked off. There's this weird heron in a movie called The Boy and the Heron. It's just weird. It seems to be calling his name. And is indicating that you can see your mother again, but you have to come with me. And Natsuko basically says, your granduncle built that. He kind of went mad. He went missing. Nobody knows what the hell happened. He was very much a genius. And this tower he built, and he did all this stuff, but he disappeared. Nobody knows what happens. And then after the dad is working and everything, Natsuko goes wandering into the woods. She disappears. And now Mahito has to figure out, what the hell, solve this mystery before everybody's history, the boy and the heron tales, woohoo. And he has to basically find a way to get this heron to work with him to get to this other world where the living and the dead collide. And he has to save his new mother. And also work through his own grief of dealing with the loss of his mother and everything, and it's life and reflection and a lot of stuff, and it's very emotional. That is one positive I will say about this. It will get you, especially if you have lost a loved one or a parent. And I'm not saying that they can't be the same thing, but this is one of those movies that is going to hit depending on the level of loss that you have felt. Now, I will say that a couple issues I had is it seemed like a lot of the weird stuff going on in this movie was almost just because they felt they had to do it, and even though the story had emotional impact, it could have also been cut by about 15 or 20 minutes. Kind of the same as Suzume. And this had good stuff to it, and I would say 90% of it was good to great, and 10% of it was meh. Kind of eh. And it just stops it from being this picture perfect right up there with The Wind Rises, Princess Mononoke, that's Spirited Away, and Howl's Moving Castle. It stops it from just being in the top tier, but also Miyazaki clearly had a lot of passion put into this. And the granduncle aspect, ties into where, family really becomes important, and you have to figure out, you don't need blood to be family. You need to, accept your grief and maybe not move on, but learn to live with it and stuff like that, and learn to love what you have. And also there's a lot of weird, fucked up creatures and crazy things going on in this world of the living and the dead. And it's very strange, as Miyazaki films are known to be. Really good voice acting. Really liked the stuff. There was good emotional impact with the story. Again, good atmosphere, really good stuff, but the world didn't fully feel alive. It felt samey, and I don't know if that's necessarily something they were going for. But Miyazaki clearly put a lot of his own passion into this. So I encourage you guys to check it out. It is in theaters. I am going to get into spoilers, though, because there's a few things I want to talk about. Not a movie you can necessarily spoil, but nevertheless, going to get into it. 3, 2, 1, it's in theaters. Spoilers. Okay. After losing his mother, great scene, by the way, where he's running through the fire and the embers and stuff like that and everything, and just this flashing imagery and all that. Beautiful countryside stuff and just great voice acting, great stuff. The elderly ladies are kind of bonding with him and stuff like that and trying to take care of him. And Natsuko basically tells the story about this tower, the granduncle, and he disappeared. Turns out the granduncle actually is living in this particular world of the living and the dead and must maintain balance with various things that he has studied, and also because of this world being kind of fucked up and all kinds of crazy. And animals that are of normal size in our world are huge in that world, and also violent. There are pelicans that are very violent. There is one particular scene before we get there where this heron that gradually transforms more into a human-like, entity, because it's in this world and not in the world it's supposed to be, or not in the world it's, supposed to, it came from. He ends up getting a feather from this, and it's the flight feather, and uses it in an arrow to basically shoot through the beak, and that causes this heron to basically kind of be at his mercy and help him out. And also Kiriko shows up shows up to help or to walk along with Mahito. Doesn't want to actually be part of this whole thing, but gets sucked into this world. And then we see various versions of these other particular characters. A pirate version of Kiriko that helps him gut a fish and helps him do all this stuff. Yo ho ho, a pirate's life for me. And also giant pelicans that swarm him, but they won't kill him because he's got the Heron's feather, or the arrow with the feather on it. And yeah, then the heron's definitely a weird character, very weird and very strange looking. And then there is this one character, Himi, that shows up. While there are these weird white blob creatures called the Warwa, or Warwa, I think it's how it is. They try to be almost like the white creatures from Princess Mononoke, just not nearly as soulless and almost ghost-like. And they are being assumed into the upper world, because this is the bottom world, where they're going to be born, after all the war and everything and all that stuff happening. These are new lives. And then these pelicans show up and start eating them. Kind of like, trying to eat baby turtles and laying the eggs and all that stuff and everything. War taking out all these lives and everything before they can even start life being snuffed out. At least that's my interpretation of it. This Hime lady shows up, young girl, uses magical powers and stuff like that, and ends up kind of becoming a guiding force for Mahito. A guiding, loving force that really just wants him to be okay and wants to make sure that he gets back to his world and that he can stay there, but things are going to get more fucked up. And also Natsuko is there, and she is in a delivery room, almost like a delivery service, and she gets visited by Mahito after going through these weird stone hallway with electricity and stuff like that. That makes no sense. Or these giant parakeet army, which I should have liked more than I did. I mean, it was more humorous and everything. They weren't scary, but it was they had a parakeet king at one point. 3 cheers for our parakeet king. I don't know why that line made me laugh. And there were some points where the parakeets were going to try to eat him. They wouldn't eat Natsuko because she had a kid. But, baby, we eat. And then Hime shows up, and her powers end up being limited at some points. So she doesn't want to use them, but she also wants to help him. And once they break into this parakeet fortress that they apparently have, they're checking out all these doors. And everybody has a select door that they go to get back to their world. There is a part where the dad sees his son and Hime and doesn't recognize her. Hime's the mother, by the way, just in case you didn't gather that. And then parakeets fly through this door And they go from giant to small, and they're shitting on everybody. And then they do that gag again a little bit later. And it was funny sort of the first time, and then it kind of law of diminishing returns the next time, but it was what it was. And basically, the granduncle is there and locked in to keep balance with this world and balance in his world that will give balance to the other world. But he's trying to create the perfect world and stack these stones and these shapes and keep this unique world going and make sure that it doesn't break apart. And he needs a successor, blood, which would mean Mahito. Mahito doesn't want to do it. There's some weird convoluted stuff with the Parakeet King and the grand uncle. And Hime gets captured. Natsuko at one point had been yelling at him to just leave, leave, leave. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? And it's a reflection of how he's handled all this stuff and how he feels she might view him since he's not her blood. And then he rescues Hime. Everybody manages to escape despite all the crazy parakeet stuff. And the uncle basically says, here's what's going to happen. You don't want to do this, that's fine. I got to let you go. I got to let you do this. I'm going to maintain balance here, do what I can, and try to create this world. You really want to go back to this world with rampant murder and stuff like that? Fine. And he manages to get Natsuko, and others are getting back, but Hime has to go through another door. Because she's going to become his mother. That still means she's going to die, but she's going to get to have him as a son. That got me. That did, I admit that. That's what actually elevated this grade up a bit, because of the emotional impact of the story. And then parakeets fly through and they become all small. And all these animals that got assumed into that world to try to bring balance, I guess. The pelicans, the parakeets, everything gets out. And now Japan is just flooded with them. And that's pretty much it right there. They moved back from Tokyo, or back to Tokyo, rather. Everything's good. Natsuko had the kid, and he's accepting everything. And he remembers his mother in his heart, and that's most important. A- gets an A-. Again, there are some issues, some pacing issues. They could have cut a few things out, and the weird imagery almost seems like it's just there for the sake of it, instead of being something inventive. It almost feels like something they're relying on, or they feel like they have to include. But A- for the really good stuff. So agree, disagree what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Reckland. I'll see you soon.